Hi everyone, Ryan Duffy here from Precision Microbes. We're back for another Tech in 10.
Tommy Heffernan here as well, and we had a bit of a rough start. I was mixing things up, but we're here to talk about the housing period, Ryan, aren't we?
Yeah, and look, I think every farm knows how important this is for maintaining animal health and obviously ensuring that we get productivity during that whole housing period. So really topical.
Right, Matthias, off we go, 10 minutes. So we're coming from outside to inside. It is a transition, right? So key things we need to think about, Ryan.
Yeah, well, everyone needs to prepare for, disease, minimizing the risk of disease. Obviously, there's a rate of things like viral and bacterial infections, which will cause pneumonia, maybe even the likes of black leg we have to prioritize, and parasitic infections, the likes of lice and worms and fluke.
Okay, if we start about inside and we think about the environment the animals are going into, so obviously your transition from pasture to housing, the gut has to transition from grass as well to forage silages. So that always takes about 10 to 14 days, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not as aggressive as maybe what we would typically think of whenever we think of a diet change, because it is still forage. It's just conserved forage or pickled forage. So yeah, 10 to 14 days is usually fine. We might see a few digestive upsets for that period in certain circumstances, but usually it settles down after a week or 2 weeks.
So space is a huge one. So space per animal, getting ventilation right, they're key things.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what age group we're talking about. Obviously, weanlings are a lot smaller than adult stock, but at the same time, space and ventilation is really important for both because pneumonia is such a major killer in these animals.
And fresh air does two things. It keeps things dry, but it also has ozone in it, actually is a natural disinfectant.
Yeah.
The other thing I always say to people before they go in is just to look at water troughs. So if you've got header tanks sitting up there that haven't been cleaned from one end of the year to the other, and that's your trough and that's your header tank, just look into tanks, clean out water troughs, because water is still really important in the health story.
And what would you be looking for there whenever you're talking about cleaning out water troughs? Is there something you see a lot of, Tommy?
Yeah, so biofilm is one obvious thing where you have the biofilm building up around the walls of the tank.
So that's the sort of stuff that looks like mold.
Mold, greeny, it can be greeny, it can be brownish. Literally you want clean tanks if you can at all. Some people, again, it might seem excessive, some people actually flush out their tanks with chlorine in advance of housing time. Just water is often overlooked. And the other thing I think about as well is it's a big transition for the foot, whether it's a sheep or a cow, it doesn't matter, from pasture into hard surfaces, particularly where the infection pressure goes up. So foot bathing and lameness control is an important part of housing as well.
So you're looking at it from an infectious foot perspective and a non-infectious foot perspective, because as you say, standing on concrete is going to be very, very different to standing out in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we could look at again, probably around maybe the mechanical side of it, but from an infectious point of it, the risk goes up. So foot bathing during the winter housing period. Okay, let's talk about kind of a couple of things that people are familiar with. Parasitic, viral, and bacterial infections. Let's start thinking about parasites. The obvious one is roundworms. Mm-hmm. What else are we thinking?
Even the likes of fluke,
okay.
Be that liver fluke or rumen fluke.
Yeah.
So those are the internal parasites that we have to prioritize, and then obviously there's external parasites, the likes of our lice, our mites. These guys are really, really troublesome, particularly if we're talking about a lot of stock, if we're in very, very enclosed spaces and if we don't clip animals' backs.
Okay, start off with worms. Just those, or work with your vet, look at fecal egg testing, look at animals. What are we thinking about?
A bit of a combination of both. They are look, there's a TASA funded scheme out there now where your vet will actually do testing for you, and you can find out exactly what is floating around on your farm and if you need to dose in the first place. So roundworms and the likes of lungworm, even coccidia, just knowing that they're floating around so we can dose if required. I'm a suckler farmer, so I know that in the beef welfare scheme, that is something that's being offered at the moment. Again, it just means that we can be more strategic with dosing, because we're seeing it time and time again that there's resistance built into these things.
So when animals going in pretty clean, we don't want them shedding worms in the house when it comes to that. Again, this is 10 minutes, just kind of some key things. Lice and mites, I think that's increasing. We're seeing more issues. There's a bit of resistance to lice and mites. So there's two different types of lice. There's biting and sucking lice.
Yep.
Biting and sucking lice. And mites then,
they can go under the skin or they can stay on top of the skin. So it's look, the treatments are very, very similar. Maybe you might have to go in with a second dose depending, but trying to prevent these by having the right stocking rates. Some people will use the likes of lime and stuff on cattle's back after clipping them. Just be very careful, because we know that can irritate eyes. But yeah, dosing under guidance with your vet, really important, because that can really start impacting performance big time.
One action is clipping the back, because it does help with sweating. It may help with lice as well. But let's talk about viral infections then. The calves, we think about the housing period, maybe with younger cattle coming into the house.
Yeah, well, the big ones would be BRSV and IBR, or bovine herpesvirus 1. They're probably the most common ones if we look at the data that's coming out from the department. So prioritizing those in our vaccination regimes, really, really key. Older stock, definitely the IBR side of things. Younger stock, RSVs.
PI3 are the big ones.
PI3, they're all up there for the first year.
Okay, and if this is my housing period here, and this is a key thing to planning, right? So this is housing here. You want to kind of give your vaccination if it's a first and second dose, so you're stimulating immune response, so it's at a peak level prior to housing. Yeah. So that's why people need to be thinking about this kind of stuff now.
Yeah, we're really talking the guts of 4 to 6 weeks out. We need to be planning, because we need to get 2 primary vaccines in before the housing period, and given a wee bit of a week, maybe 2 weeks before the actual animals go inside. And even thinking of that, we'll be taking fecal samples roughly around this time as well, to try and work out what we're going to dose with. So a month out is when we need to be starting thinking about housing.
Okay, so now is the time to be thinking about housing from a vaccination perspective, from a planning and looking at a setup, cleaning water troughs, just getting feed space ready for animals, setting up maybe foot baths and things like that, looking at your parasite controls.
Sorry to interrupt you, but even thinking about the diet, putting a wee bit of silage out with animals, they might pick at it and help with that transition before they even go inside.
Okay, because essentially when we're transitioning younger cattle indoors, that is a risk period, or not. That's a change of the microbes when we're putting them on maybe concentrate feed as well, isn't it?
If they're getting a wee bit loose, I'd prefer them to be loose outside than inside.
Okay, all right, okay. Something where people you can use for younger calves, you can use Precision Microbes at higher doses during those transition periods. Right, anything else, Ryan, on the housing period then?
Well, bacterial infections, again, really key for bovine respiratory disease, your Mannheimia, your Mycoplasma, your Pasteurella, your Histophilus, but even the likes of certain clostridial diseases. I know a lot of people will vaccinate prior to going into the house as well for clostridial diseases. So a lot of the time they're incorporated with viral agents in vaccines, but just make sure that they are, and consult with your vet to make sure you're getting the broadest protection that's specific for your farm.
Okay. Just going back again to lice and mites, one thing I see, whether it's right or not, is the biting lice tend to cause more aggressive pruritus or itching around the head and neck and stuff, and the sucking lice. I see with mites as well, there's different types of mites, isn't there?
Different types of mites, similar sort of treatment, which is quite convenient, but they could be up around the neck. Animals might be stamping. It depends on the species of mite that's circulating around within your herd.
Okay. Is there anything else then from the housing perspective we need to cover?
No, I think it's just come back to the basic principle. We need the plan. We need to be doing this 4 to 6 weeks out. I know, look where we are at now at this time of year. A lot of people are probably already within this period. So just plan ahead, have a consultation with your vet about worms, about fluke, about viral infections, bacterial infections, particularly stuff that you may have seen on farm before.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's it. That's the end Tech in 10 today. If you have a Tech in 10 video you'd like us to cover, so just send us in an email on info@precisionmicrobes.com or comment on any of our social media channels, and we're happy to tackle any subject that you throw at us, potentially.
Thank you.